Hi everyone, I'm Brittany and I'm here in the UCMB uniform closet to show you all the steps you need to take to bring your uniform from a gigantic number 330 to a svelte 118. Join Ellen, Emma, and me as we go through all the steps from fitting a uniform and pinning it all the way to sewing and taking the seams out. In the description box below, you'll see a list of all the tasks and steps you need to take in order to make any uniform look great.
Emma's been sent to have her uniform fitted, but before her uniform can be altered, she needs to make sure her uniform has 2 coat hangers, a piece of paper with her name and the uniform number on it, and a uniform with a cummerbund. See how Emma's pants are way too long?
Yeah!
Before we can alter the hem, we need to check to make sure the suspenders are all the way taken in. So Emma's suspenders are down. We can move them up a lot more. And sometimes if you move the suspenders up, you don't need to do any alteration on the hem. Emma's pants, though, are still way too long. So what we'll do before we even look at the hem is take up the suspenders. If the hem is going to be more than 4 inches worth of sewing, you want to do this. So you'll lift up this strap to a height that you think is appropriate, and then you'll fold it over so it lines up. It should be 4 layers. Then you'll take 2 pins and pin it horizontally, but you want the pins to be going in opposite directions. When fitting a hem, it's important to make sure that the hem isn't too short or their ankles will be visible when they march, but not too long, because if they're stepping on the hem while they're marching, they'll wear a hole in their pants and those pants will be unusable forever. So when you're hemming, you want to fold the pants up and underneath, like this. And you want to have the pant come just to the top of the foot. Alright, so you're going to take a pin and make sure that the seams are lined straight up. You can feel the seam on the inside and the seam on the outside. Make sure they're parallel, and then put a pin across the seam. So you're going to do this on all 4 sides, making sure to line the seam up on all sides and trying to make sure that it's as straight across as possible. So double check to make sure that the hem is straight across and reaches the top of the foot, but doesn't sink behind the heel. The sides of Emma's pants are also way too large. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold it over like this and use the same pinning technique that you used on the suspender straps. So you're going to do 1 pin across, and then another pin across in the opposite direction. Not everyone's pants need to be taken in at the sides. In fact, most people's don't. And a lot of times people who are being fitted will claim their pants are too large. That's often not the case, and you need to use your judgment about whether or not it's going to be a cumbersome misfit based on the amount of work you have left to do. When fitting a jacket, the first thing you should look at is the sleeves. Depending on what section a member is in, it will change how you fit the sleeves. So for a horn player, you're going to want them to hold their arms up as though they're playing, and for a percussionist, you want them to hold their hands at set. The first thing you're going to look at, though, is how the sleeves look when their hands are down at their sides. As you can see, Emma's sleeves are covering her hands a little bit, so no matter which section she was in, we'd want to alter a little bit. If she was a horn, as you can see when she lifts her hands up, it's not too bad, so we'd only fold it over a little bit based on how her hands looked when they were down at her sides. But if she was a percussionist, when she puts her hands down, you can see the jacket covers her hands and will get in the way of her sticks. So you're going to want to fold it up as much as possible so that it doesn't touch the heel of her hand, but you never want to fold the sleeve over the white stripe. If the member is in the snare line or the tenor line, you're going to want to have them try on their jacket with the harness underneath. After you've determined what height the sleeve should be, you're going to want to make sure you get a pin through all the layers of the sleeve, and you're going to do 1 pin on the top, bottom, and both sides, so 4 pins total, just to make sure that it doesn't slip anywhere around and is even for the person sewing. The back of a jacket usually doesn't need to be altered, only if it's so large it's going to hinder the movement of the member. It's good to have a little bit of space so that you can put layers on underneath the jacket in the wintertime, but Emma's jacket is so large you can see that it's going to be a problem for her when she's moving around. So the first thing you want to do is move the cape out of the way, and when you're fitting a jacket you have to check and fold along each seam here. And when you fold it, you want to make sure that you're feeling to make sure the fabric is flat all the way down underneath. And there's a silky layer underneath that you want to make sure you get inside the fold. And so what you're going to do is you're going to grab both seams and fold it so that you know that it's even on both sides. And then you're going to let go of one side and grab this side and pin in the middle. And then reach up to the top. Make sure you tuck it in so it's as flat as it can go. And then do the very bottom where the back meets the hem down here. It's okay for there to be a little shelf like that. If necessary, you can move the pins after you've done it because sometimes you'll end up with a bunch, and that's fine if you need to readjust. It's also very easy to catch the member's clothing underneath the pins, and so make sure when you're done to feel underneath all the pins that it's separate from their clothes, otherwise you're going to have to repin everything. Now that you've pinned one side, you're going to do the second side, making sure that it's a similar tension if possible. So you're going to take this, fold it at the seam, feel for this seam here, put a pin, making sure you're going through all the layers of the jacket, but not the clothing underneath. And the top. And then the bottom, making sure it's as smooth as you can make it. When you're taking the uniform off the band member, make sure that you go very slowly and gently. You neither want to stab them with a pin nor move any pins out from your alteration, or you're going to have to start all over. Once the uniform has been fully fitted, you should write on the paper that has their name and uniform number exactly where you put pins in the uniform. That way the sewers know where the pins should be. So write down the hem, the suspenders, everything. And then once you've done that, you should put a piece of tape with their name on the jacket in case the paper becomes separated from the uniform. Once you have your uniform all filled out with all of the relevant fitting information, you should put it on the right side of the rack with the cummerbund facing to the right. All finished uniforms will be put on the rack on the left with the cummerbuns facing to the left. First thing you should do is plug in your machine, turn it on, and put the peg in the hole that will hold your spool of thread. You're gonna thread the thread through this metal here and then onto this little nub. And then you're gonna put the thread through this hole in the bobbin. And then set the bobbin down onto this metal peg to click, and then click it to the right. So now your pedal, if you hold this, your pedal will thread your bobbin. So once your bobbin's threaded, move it to the left, you can take it off and cut the thread. Make sure there aren't too many strings hanging off or it'll jam the machine. So to thread your needle, you're going to put your spool of thread on your spike And then the steps are numbered on the machine. So 1, you're gonna loop the thread through this metal piece, straight down this gap to number 2, and then up again in this gap. Loop it around this metal top piece, down through 4. And then on the side here, there's a hook. So you're gonna hook the string there, and then you're gonna thread your needle. So to pick up this bobbin thread, what you're going to do is hold onto your needle thread and then turn this wheel so the needle goes down into the machine and then comes back up. It'll grab the bobbin thread, so if you pull up, you'll see a loop come up, and then you just grab the loop and pull it out. So you'll have your needle thread, and then you'll have your bobbin thread coming up from the machine under the foot. So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're sewing pants is to turn them inside out so that you can see the hem on the outside and you can see the yellow pins are on the inside of the pant. And you want to look and make sure that it's straight all the way around. If it's like one area of the pin is a lot lower or a lot higher than the others, it'll cause a bunch when you're done sewing and it'll look pretty bad. So you're going to take this plastic piece off so that you have a sewing arm that you can put inside the pant leg. So you're going to put the pant leg through here under the foot and get your thread all set up. And then about anywhere from 1/4 to 1/2 inch is a fine seam allowance. So what I like to do is just kind of like line the pant leg up. If you can see on this side, if you line the pant leg up with the edge of the foot, that is pretty good for the seam. So you're gonna want to look on your machine. Make sure that you have it on straight stitch. So for this machine, straight stitch is the A, and you're gonna want the length to be around 3. So usually a good stitch width. You make sure you drop your presser foot down, so it's holding the fabric tight, and make sure it's flattened out. You don't want it to be all bunched up like this. So you want it to be straight, and then just push down the foot, and try and keep the edge of the fabric along the foot line. So when you're gonna alter a jacket back, you need to first make sure that it's lying flat so you can unzipper it and kind of lay it flat on the table. It's never gonna be perfect just because it's tapered to the bottom, and it's also tapped down right here, so there's nothing really to do about that because you can see the fold extends up into the shoulder. That's so that you can extend your arms when you're wearing it. So you can only sew up to this little notch. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna try and make it as flat as you can. You can look on this side, on the inside, make sure that the silk is all folded over inside this bit, or it's gonna puff out inside when they're wearing it. So you can see this is pretty straight. So we're gonna take it, we're gonna put it underneath the foot here. And you're gonna wanna feel underneath to make sure that the silk is also getting underneath. So you're gonna find that tack and make sure the jacket is straight. And again, you're gonna want to put the existing seam here right underneath the foot. You're not going to want to sew on top of here. You need to make sure that whoever is going to be ripping out seams is going to be able to rip out the seam you sewed and not the one that the factory put in there. So make sure you have a little bit of space there. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to lower your needle into the fabric so you can get a good feel of the thickness. Sewing a jacket's very difficult because it's so thick. Sometimes you'll need to use a denim needle, which you can find in the dummy boxes. And needles will sometimes break when you're sewing. So you make sure if you hear like a crunching noise in the machine, you stop because that probably means you've broken your needle. So once you've got this down, you're gonna wanna kind of straighten yourself out again, make sure you're all set, and then just slowly go through. When you get to needles, you can take them out. And then you're just gonna keep going. Making sure all the time that you're still staying straight, nothing has pinched underneath in the machine. And now you're not gonna be able to go all the way down to here because you can see that the jacket underneath ends here. So you're gonna go down as far as you can go there. You're going to come over here and press the reverse button and back it up a little bit and then go forward again. And that ties it off so that it won't come undone even if whoever's wearing it stretches the back. This is what hem should look like at the end. If you look closely, you can see the factory hem here, and then a little further in, the hem that I just made on the machine. and so that's clearly differentiated so that you know which one to rip out. And you can see here, there's a little bit of a fold in here, but that's okay. No one's gonna be able to see it. And it goes up to here, and it lays pretty flat. And if you look at the inside, there's no major bunches. It's all just pretty straight across.
First thing you want to do when you're hand sewing is you want to tie a knot onto your needle. So if I'm doing anything hand sewing, usually I will do like this type of width from shoulder to shoulder, I guess. A little longer is okay. So you want to cut. Okay. And then I double up to make it sturdier. You want to put your needle through. And pull so that there's 2 strands, and pull so that the ends are even. And then at the end, you can use your hand to create a knot. So, okay, so you can see we have one little tiny knot right there, so we want to make another knot right on top of it so that it doesn't pull through. Okay, so there's our knot, and now we're ready to sew. Okay, so this is the side of the pants, and you just sew this in a rectangle around the pins. So we come up and tug, come back down. The stitches don't need to be too small, just make sure that you pull nice and tight so they won't come undone. We'll go this way so that we form a rectangle through the pins. Okay, so to finish the sewing, we came in with our last stitch to end the rectangle, and now to knot it off, you go through the last stitch that you did on the bottom. I go through it 3 times, so you go through that stitch. And if you get a little fabric, that's okay. Go through it 3 times and tug nice and hard so it's sturdy, and then you can cut the ends like that. And then you make sure you take your pins out, and the side is finished. Okay, so here's our suspenders, and you do the suspenders the same way that you do the sides, which is just a rectangle around the pins or inside the pins, as long as it's nice and sturdy, and it won't come apart. Okay, so this is how you sew a sleeve. You can use a thin needle for this because you don't sew through very much. So you want to make sure that you go through the silk right here and come through this inside folded up layer, because you don't want to see any stitches on the outside. So you can see there's no stitch right there, even though I just sewed right here. And I just do a stitch like this, so. Just nice, like that. You can come forward right up here, through the silk, not through the outer layer, and push through. So you have stitches just like that. Okay, so you can see that the sleeve is fully done. So I'm going to knot it off again by going through my last stitch 3 times. And then you can turn it back like this, how it should look. You can take out the pins. You don't want to put it back on the rack with pins in it. And you can see that you can't see any stitching on here. Okay, so to take the seams out, you're going to use your seam ripper, and you can clearly see that someone hand stitched this. So you can just tear the seams and it'll rip, and you can pull all the string out. You don't need to do it to every stitch. They'll come right out. You should be able to pull and remove the stitches. Be really careful with something like this because that's sewn by the uniform company, so you don't want to remove it. You just want to remove the stitches that people did at the beginning of the season to make them fit better. So you can see it's back to its original size now. So for pant legs, you need to be really careful to make sure that you don't take out the factory hem, which is what the uniform company put in, and we don't want to rip that out or the pants will be unusable. So this here looks like it's been hemmed, but it's a factory hem, so you don't touch that. That's how it's supposed to be. But we can see on this pant leg, we can see this blue hem, and when we come in here, there's no black line like we saw here. So we can rip this out. So let's see. These will be tighter because they're sewn with a machine, and you don't need to rip out all of them, you just need to rip out a few, and then eventually you'll be able to pull it apart. Okay, so here we have the factory hem on this side, and here's the new stitch. So we want to make sure that we rip only the new stitch and not the factory hem. So you can rip from the top. Just put your seam ripper under these tiny little threads to rip them out. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you follow these simple tips, your uniforms can look as good as this.